Hi all. Today we're going to be talking about the HSF Harekaze, the high school fleet collaboration destroyer that was released several years ago and has not returned since, but I still want to make a video on it because it's still a very interesting ship. So the Harekaze is actually quite similar in a lot of ways to its sister ship Kagero. And in this regard, if you've played Kagero, you should know what to expect out of the Harekaze. You have a fairly low hit pool for the tier, your armor is piss poor, your maneuverability is okay, edging on so-so, and your concealment is very good, being 5.4 kilometers when fully built. However, Harekaze differs in a few ways, namely in 3 different hull layouts. They're all the same hull, but rather they change your gun mountings. So, with your stock hull, or Hull A we'll call it, you get basically the standard Kagero guns. They are exactly the same, and don't use them. Hull C carries 3 127s. They're basically USN 127s. They are also not that good, because you only get 3 of them. And sure, they have a very interesting boxy model, but given that you only have 3 of them, and they don't hit very hard, and they don't fire very fast, you don't do a whole lot of damage with these things. Basically, their only advantage over the other weapons is turret traverse and having dual-purpose capability, but your AA still sucks anyway, and you know how to pre-aim your guns. Which brings us to Hull B, the important one, the good one. You get 3 Akazuki-style 100s. These are very good to have, especially on a ship with such low detection, because if you'll remind yourself, the Akazuki, which has 4 of these, has, I think, a 6.0 or a 6.1 detection. But in the Harekaze, you have a 5.4, with 3 Akazuki 100mm. So not only does the ship have fairly good damage output, it's also incredibly stealthy, tied for best in tier with Kagero. And in this regard, if you know what you're doing, you could easily force engagements to your advantage, and you should have no problem controlling other destroyers. Of course, these should be the only guns you're running. You get a fine 3-second reload, 1200 HE alpha, which is low, but you're spitting out a lot of them. And, notably, because these are the 100s, you get 30mm HE armor pen, meaning you don't need to take IFHE to deal good damage. So, especially in down tiers, you can farm the living daylights out of cruisers and battleships if you don't have any destroyers to shoot at. So these guns do work fairly well in assisting your damage output, especially if you go for a full gun build, which is somewhat viable. And if you really want to work on the guns, you can absolutely commit to a gun build. Torpedoes are basically the exact same as Kagero here. They're 10k, 17.2k damage torps with a 1.6 detectability, 65 knots, and they reload in 90 seconds when you're built for them. They are pretty much exactly the same as Kagero torpedoes, and honestly, I would recommend leaning into the ship as a torpedo boat, for reasons I'll get into shortly. Of course, you have your depth charges that don't do anything, you have your AA that doesn't do anything, and your maneuverability is just okay. But by far, the ship's biggest strength comes from the fact that, you know, it has 5.4 detectability, which is some of the best in the tier. Pretty much nothing outspots you. Or rather, nothing does outspot you, and even going up tiers, nothing outspots you. Like, it is absolutely crazy how good the ship's detection is, especially for the armament you're packing at tier 8. Of course, in up tiers, you may struggle against other ships with similar detection but better gun output, but in same tier, even to tier 9 and all the way down to tier 6, you will feel more than comfortable with your guns. And you'll only really need to worry about big DPS output destroyers. Otherwise, for most things that have similar detectability, you'll be able to outgun them. And this is huge for keeping yourself alive. So, in the way of your equipment slots, I would obviously opt for main armaments 1. Your other slots here don't matter because you should be running jet flag anyway. Slot 2, I'd go for engine room protection. You can take engine boost if you want it, but it's not super important on the ship. I would just go for engine room, unless you're literally swimming in coal. For slot 3, I'd go for aiming systems. Obviously, you just get a little bit better dispersion. Torpedo tubes is fine, but 5% torp speed doesn't really do a whole lot on this thing. And, you know, the traverse buff is the same here, so you could opt for smoke generator if you really wanted to play into guns, and if you wanted to just, you know, sail around and smoke and just shoot things. But I personally wouldn't recommend it, because while you do have good output, it's not as good as, say, Akazuki or other gun destroyers in the tier. Slot 4 is up to you between propulsion and steering gears. I would personally lean towards propulsion, but steering gears is absolutely fine too if you prefer to open water it a little bit more. And of course, slot 5 has to be concealment. It's just that good on the ship. I will note, you can swap smoke for a torpedo reload booster here. So if you're committing to a torpedo build, it is nice to have. That said, in contrast to, say, Kagero and Yagumo, I think you should be bringing the smoke generator regardless here. Don't get me wrong, if you're going to commit to the torpedo build, it absolutely works. The problem is, because the Harekaze has such good gunpower, being able to smoke and just punch things down, or smoke when you have friendly radar on a destroyer, means that you can more safely open up and engage, while also having the smoke generator to keep yourself out of trouble, whereas with the torpedoed reload booster, obviously you can't do that. You can't just create yourself a smoke cloud. But in division play, obviously the reload booster works excellently, or if you really, really want to commit, you can still make it work. I would just recommend the smoke gen. In the way of your commander build, obviously you can build it for both guns or torpedoes. I've opted for a torpedo-centric build because the torpedoes are so good and your gunpower's already good enough. But if you want to go for, say, BFT, AFT for a little bit more range, a little bit more output, hell, you could take Fearless Brawler if you really wanted to go for a wacky build. I would stay away from IFHE even if you're going for a gun build, just because you've already got 30 mils of pen, which means the only breakpoint you really suck against is 32, but even then you could just shoot the superstructure and farm the shit out of them. So I personally opted for preventive maintenance, especially with Yamamoto, because you get 15% more. It's not huge, but it's nice. Next, go for Last Stand, followed up with Survivability Expert and Concealment Expert. You shouldn't be bringing the ship in a battle without 10 points at the very minimum, because Concealment saves you. Honestly, at tier 8 you should have 10 points anyway, but Concealment is literally mandatory on this thing. Survivability Expert will help your hit pool just a little bit. And you honestly could opt for for Suzuki, the Coal Commander, because he does get an increased Survivability Expert. This is especially useful if you're going for a more gunnery-focused build. But it's still not a huge difference over the regular ship. I mean, you go from 16.1 to 16.5. It's nice, but it's not huge. I would personally... I'd build it, but I wouldn't pick Suzuki solely for it. Yamamoto is still a better commander here. Of course, after this, fill out your points however you want to. Superintendent isn't a must-have, but it's nice to have. Obviously, an extra smoke, extra engine boost, it's just useful to have. Adrenaline Rush, mandatory. You should be getting it, honestly. It's that good. Fill the Tubes and Swiftfish personally are just because, for me, more torpedo power, but if you're going for a gun build, obviously ignore them. But they're still nice to have regardless. So, of course, we will now head into an actual game, because that's how I do these things, live. We could explode and get a really shitty match, but unfortunately, that's just how it goes sometimes. Sometimes you just don't get great games. And now we sit in queue. I wonder if this will be like the Black video where I had to make a specific chapter just for the queue that we had to sit in for like 3 minutes. A 4 aircraft carriers, god. 9 submarines, ugh, this might not be a very good game. 10 submarines, ugh, wargaming, please. So one other thing that I think the Harekaze should get credit for is it's actually a pretty alright ranked boat. I don't think it's as good as some other options, but it is a solid ranked boat because you have the detection and the gunpower to make yourself work. It's just... it's not always going to work perfectly, ultimately. It's still very good, it's just not always going to work perfectly, and you will still get outgunned by more dedicated destroyers. Tier 10 game, that's rough. However, I see going in that we only have one radar to worry about, and that's a Buffalo, not a big deal. Suluwanki is an easily winnable trade, so long as I don't just gamer into the Hydro. Harekaze will be annoying, Marceau I can keep spotted, and same for Alva. Actually, a pretty good lineup. No, kind of surprised the carrier and the subs didn't show up, but you know what? We'll take what we can get. We will gladly take what we can get, in fact. So yeah, I'm not really seeing anything I need to worry about. The only thing that I'm slightly worried about is the Suluwanki, but that's still very easy to disengage from. The Kita is annoying if he pushes me, but I'm not too worried about it. Especially given that we have a Stalingrad and a Cleveland, and Stalingrad's on this flank. That's actually very nice. So, with the Harekaze, you can play it moderately aggressively. As I keep mentioning, because it is the standout feature of the Harekaze, your gunpower is good enough to trade with other destroyers. I mean, it's Akizuki minus a gun turret, which is still pretty large for DPS, obviously, but you still have very good output, especially for 5.4. The only other ship you really need to worry about that has the same detection as you is Cossack at 5.5, because Cossack will nuke you. In general, if people can push into you with Hydro or push into you with Radar, you will still die because your HP pool is not big enough to comfortably take these sorts of engagements. And while your DPM is good, it's just not quite good enough to outplay, say, a Fantask, a Terrible, a Cossack, etc. You will still get gunned down in the same tier. So, play it intelligently. It is a pretty strong boat if you use your head and you think, and if you have hands, even fingers, you can probably use the ship pretty well. Unfortunately, I'm not super sure why I'm making a guide on it, given that the ship has not been available for like 4 years, or 3 years at minimum, because they replaced it with the shit-ass Harekaze too. But I like it a lot. It's one of my favorite ships to play. It's nice. Once you get it down, it's super comfortable and super easy to use. I should mention, because I've neglected to mention it so far, your gun range is only 9.4 without AFT. Your torpedoes outrange your guns. This may sound like a bad thing, and depending on what you're doing, it can be. However, unless you're full committing to a gun build, I would actually personally argue that 9.4 gun range is actually a benefit on the Harekaze. And the reason for this, if you may be wondering, is because, well, you're allowed to disengage significantly more easily. That was very unnecessarily wordy. Suluwangi. Alright, that's Hydro. That could be concerning, and the Buffalo's pushing. Now we're going to turn out, but because we have such good detection... Ah, there's the radar. Okay. Might have been able to avoid that engagement. Unfortunate, but still, we can put some good damage into the Suluwangi before we can disengage. We will turn out, we will turn away. That Alvaro is also going to be extremely annoying, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. I'm just going to engine out, wait for, there goes the radar. And now we are going to smoke and disengage. And now, because our gearing is spotting for us, we can just comfortably sit here and farm. Not going to burn my DCP, obviously, on one gun. Especially when you already have main armaments mod, which will, make it come back faster. There's Hydro. Suluwangi is pushing us. That is actually a very large concern, because our gearing is going to explode. And I'm at a high risk of being nuked myself. But we do have torpedoes back in 20 seconds. Suluwangi is probably reversing if I'm already being despotted by Hydro, while the gearing is still being engaged. Yeah. Unfortunate that we're going to lose our gearing so fast. I'm not really sure what his game plan is here, but it is what it is. Fortunately, that's a nice gap for us to quickly chuck a torpedo into, because I highly doubt the Suluwangi will be silly enough to push in. Our St. Vincent's complaining about the Stalingrad. Honestly, I can see why. We got another rack. I wouldn't be surprised if the Alvaro specifically tries to cut that way, so we're going to torpedo. Just try and... Alright, so Suluwangi's close. We know that for a fact. There he is, in fact. We can still win this trade. This is actually still a very comfortable trade, so long as I don't get third-partied here. Because it is really, it's just an Ajnavoy that's been given Pan-Asian traits, so I'm not too worried about this engagement. Obviously, if other ships start showing up, I will be very worried about this engagement. But the Suluwangi is not even firing at me, which is minorly baffling, because he just lost a lot of HP in that trade. Fortunately, the Alvaro's shown up, which is annoying for me. But now I just need to wait until I break spotting. And we'll be safe. Get a wall ride here just to dodge that Alvaro a bit. I really need my detection radius to reset. There we go. That's an unfortunate salvo coming my way. We will continue humping the border to make it really hard to hit us. Okay, so we know the Suluwangi is really low. We know he's 1900, and I don't remember if it gets a heal or not. I don't think it does, but even if it does, that's still an incredibly low amount of HP for him to have to work around for the rest of the match, so I'm glad with that. What is immediately more concerning is the fact that we're giving up C so much. We're giving up an incredible amount of... And there goes our Seihan. Damn. We're giving up a lot of map control at the top here. And if we don't mitigate this, we might have a problem. About time for the Stalin radar, by the way. So the Buffalo's going to try and run around the top. So what we're going to do is we're going to pre-torp this. He's probably going to cut in. But nonetheless, we might be able to snake a free torp hit or two here. He might actually be going around. That'd be amazing. Yeah, I don't see him committing to that. In fact, I really don't see him committing to that. I'm gonna torp just to block that lane off. I'm not sure if anybody will try and make anything happen there, but the Monarch might. Our St. Vincent is continuing to maul at our Stalingrad, and I'm not even sure what our Stalingrad is up to, but it is what it is. In fact, we're giving up so much control here. It's not even funny. Yeah, that silly Wangi's super low. 400 HP. Come on, guys. We can nuke him. Please. I beg. And our Stalingrad's committing suicide. Okay, that's not exactly how I want things to go. There's the Buffalo radar. Luckily, I have a fair chunk of hardcover to work with, but that's still very annoying. Yeah, so our Stalingrad is just going to commit suicide. Okay. That's pretty cool, if I do say so myself. So Buffalo's going to try and play that island. That makes sense. So he'll probably go up and around when he's done, I reckon. Or he'll reverse out. I'm not sure. I'd expect him to come up and around, knowing that our battleships are up here and I'm up here. But it's pretty hard to predict the average World of Warships player nowadays, so I'm not going to place too much into that. I will still throw a couple torps out that way, just in case, but it's not a huge deal. And there goes our Stalingrad. And now we have no intelligence. Well, to be honest, it didn't seem like the team had much in the first place, but I mean more so in the radar department. Monarch might push around. That might be a chance to land a couple free torpedo hits. Unfortunately, yeah, okay, so the Buffalo is going to push out. A torpedo reload booster would be super nice here, but we don't have one. He probably is hydroactive, if he's already slowing down. Our Tromp and Kita trade, that's bad trade in our favor, given that we're rapidly losing ships. Okay. Okay. This is not going our way. Okay, we get the Marceau, that's good. I'll be able to whittle down this Buffalo. Hopefully our Musashi or Vermont can just wipe him off the face of the earth, because if we just let this Buffalo sit here, I will get radared, and I will probably just die to the Monarch. Whereas if he actually is dealt with, I can just sit here and torp the shit out of the Monarch. So he's literally turning broadside, Musashi. This is literally the freest kill, and like, this might be the freest kill I've ever seen in World of Warships. Musashi, this is incredibly free. Please, 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 I beg. Thank you. Okay, that's actually huge, because now, with the Buffalo out of the way, those torps might collide with the Musashi, which should be annoying, but whatever. Still, with the Buffalo out of the way, I now feel reasonably comfortable enough to fire at the Monarch. Obviously, I'm going to shatter a lot, but it's not a huge deal. And we are... This game is probably not going to go our way. I also can't beat the Alvaro in a trade. Obviously, I could easily pocket the Silly Wangi if he shows up. But that's probably not going to happen. I'm going to smoke just to stay relatively disengaged here for safety reasons. Monarch's going to dodge his torpedo, but now he has to give a pretty bad angle. Yeah, Musashi takes the kill. Alright. If our St. Vincent is actually somewhat competent on the... Never mind. This might be a lost cause at this point. Nonetheless, as a good old destroyer player, we're going to do what we can. Not securing that Silly Wangi earlier is pretty unfortunate. Actually, the fact that we just straight up didn't really kill much of them at all is pretty unfortunate. Because by the time we actually had a somewhat decent push going over here with the Musashi, the Vermont's already leaving. Our Gehring committed suicide, our Stalingrad committed suicide. That's the unfortunate reality of doing these things live, you know? Sometimes the games just don't go the way you want them to. I mean, that's why I do them live, because, you know, it's a real match. It's just how it goes sometimes, but it is quite unfortunate. Smoke cloud right next to that Ohio. I almost wonder if the Silly Wangi isn't shadowing him. In fact, if I was betting, I'd definitely bet on the Silly Wangi shadowing that Ohio, because the Alvaro should be somewhere near the top of the sea. If I had to make a guess. This Ohio's probably gonna turn in. Yeah, okay, there's the Alvaro. Okay, that's a free kill for Amisashi. Actually, that's not. Never mind. I'm gonna bank on this Ohio. Ah, he's turning out. Unfortunate. I figured he would probably turn in to come directly combat the Musashi, but bad call on my part. And at this rate, I'm gonna run headfirst into the St. Vincent. I can't engage this Ohio to try and distract because I will just simply get melted. I don't know where the Siliwangi is, so I don't really want to just run into a Hydro and die. Oh. Well, that's not what I was expecting. I really didn't think the Siliwangi would reposition that much. A kill, but my torps aren't ready, and the St. Vincent will probably blat me. Yeah, okay, the St. Vincent will blat me. Yeah, there's a sure detection. And now I'm about to be wiped off the earth. Yep. Unfortunate. Unfortunate. I genuinely thought the Siliwangi was probably shadowing the Ohio. Oh well. And there goes our Musashi, and we'll just leave our Vermont to end this game on its own because this is not happening. This is a loss. This is no way. This is a loss. Alright, so in conclusion, without the ship on the screen, Harekaze. Good ship. Detectability is best in tier, or tied with Kagero, and you get 3 Akatsuki guns that don't need IFHE because they have 30mm pen out of the box, and you get good torpedoes. It's an incredibly reliable ship, it's incredibly easy to use, well, easy quote-unquote, and if you know what you're doing, you can dominate most engagements with it solely because you have such a big detection advantage over everything that does outgun you. So, unfortunately, that match didn't quite go the way I wanted it to, but it is what it is. I will see you all another time. Bye. Oh no.